OK, let's get the latest from Munich with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, lovely to see you this morning. Catherine, OK, bring us up to date what's going on there. There's lots and lots of stories coming out of this particular conference.
Yes, good afternoon, Dawn. It really feels like Munich is the centre of everything at the moment, following, of course, the 90-minute phone call from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin the other day. Then yesterday we had an extraordinary speech from the US Vice President J.D. Vance, and today an equally extraordinary speech from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Just quickly on J.D. Vance, they expected that he would talk about European defence, about Ukraine, about China perhaps. Instead, there was only a very glancing, brief reference to that, where he said that he thought they'd get a reasonable settlement. But that 19-minute speech was nearly entirely basically having a go at European leaders. First of all, say that they're cracking down on free speech. The biggest culprits, according to him, are the United Kingdom and Scotland in particular. And then he also criticised very heavily the number of migrants that Europe has let in to its shores since 2016, and drew a direct line between the suspected terrorist attack only 2 days ago, less than a mile from here. I was at the site yesterday when that failed asylum seeker crashed a car into a crowd. That speech was met with a very, very muted and quiet response. Safe to say it went down like a ton of bricks here. Fast forward to this morning, President Zelensky's speech, frequent applause and a standing ovation at the end. He issued really a very startling wake-up call to Europe, calling for an army of Europe and saying, I urge you to act for your own sake. He was making it very clear. He says it's not just about Ukraine. Don't think that a deal can be done and the threat of Putin goes away. He says that Russia needs war to hold power together. And he said if they're not fighting in Ukraine, that Russia will have, quote, a surplus of battle-hardened soldiers who know nothing but killing and looting. He suggested that Kyiv has intelligence that Russia is planning to send troops to Belarus this year. He also said yesterday they have intelligence that Russia is planning to invade a member of NATO next year.
Catherine, how is that going down? What's the reaction from people there to what Zelensky's had to say?
Well, I think it's no surprise, really, of course, what he is calling for. But I think the intelligence that he says he has is very worrying. I think Dutch intelligence have heard similar. And, you know, Europe has been able to rely on America for decades. Since the Second World War, effectively, we've been used to having the US as the sort of policeman of the world. And what's happened is it's allowed European leaders who really thought that the days of war in Europe were long over, not to really prioritize defense, not to spend anything like that 2% of GDP, which is supposed to be a minimum for NATO membership, and to get away with it. We've had this peace dividend. But Donald Trump did make clear back when he was president last time that this was really not good enough. As far as he can see, Europe has been freeloading on the back of America. He's now saying, pay up, you need to spend 5%. And now, I mean, lots of countries nowhere even near 2%. So this is very difficult. I think European leaders are sitting up, they are taking notice, but are they going to act, and can they act quickly enough? I think there's a lot of doubt about that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. That's Catherine Forster, political correspondent, live in Munich for us. Lots of strands coming out of that particular conference. Lots of people saying things that I don't think people were expecting them to say. OK, let's see what my panel make of this one. I have political commentator Matthew Stadlen and journalist and writer Claire Muldoon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining me today. Really appreciate your company. I'm going to need your help as well, because it was Valentine's Day yesterday. It was also the husband's birthday, so I'm a bit away with the fairies. I've been living off of Valentine's Day chocolates and things like that. So good to have a good, strong panel. Now, what do we make of what we hear coming out of Munich? This free speech is in retreat in the UK, warns Vance. Zelensky, you know, we need your help still.
If you spend a bit too much time on Twitter or X under the stewardship of Elon Musk, under the ownership of Elon Musk, then you'll think this was the best thing ever to happen to Britain, this speech. Personally, as a proud Brit, I'm not into foreign leaders roasting our country. I thought it was an embarrassment. I thought it embarrassed America. I thought it betrayed decades and decades of a close relationship, hundreds of years, you could argue, of a close relationship between us and the United States. I thought it was patronising. I thought the Vice President talked down to Europe. He talked down to us. The clip that we showed, or that you showed earlier, of Donald Trump talking with a forked tongue, on the one hand insisting that he gets on well with Starmer, on the other hand making it clear that it was Starmer who requested the meeting and that Starmer has to go and see him. Whether you're a Labour supporter, a Tory supporter, a Reform supporter, whoever you support in this country, listening to an American president talk down to our Prime Minister should, I think, send a shiver down your spine. The idea that somehow free speech has gone down the drain in this country is absolutely absurd. He referred to a case of someone who was praying near an abortion clinic, and he suggested that the fact that this person was punished for that under the law meant that we have a real issue with free speech. You can have whatever view you like on abortion, and I think in the overwhelming majority in this country, we support the laws as they stand and women's right to choose up to a certain point in the pregnancy. You don't intimidate or do something that might have the impact of intimidating a woman at such a vulnerable point in her life. And I think this particular individual claimed that he was praying for the aborted fetus of a previous partner of his. Well, if you want to do that praying, you don't have to do that praying outside an abortion clinic or near an abortion clinic when a woman is going through an extremely vulnerable point in her life. So I thought J.D. Vance's speech was disgraceful. The idea that he's more threatened or feels more threatened by the threat from within, as he describes it, in Europe than Russia or China is absolutely appalling.
OK, this is, Vance was referring to Adam Smith Connor, who was arrested after he refused to leave a safe zone around an abortion clinic designed to protect, as we've said, vulnerable women going in. What did you make of it, Claire?
What about that point in particular?
About what he said in general.
Let's take the whole thing that Matthew started off by saying, that the swathes of people on X or Twitter would be open to J.D. Vance's speech and practically be in agreement with it. One, I don't think a lot of our viewers are on X or Twitter, but I think they would agree with it. I am on X, and I certainly didn't spend a lot of time on it yesterday or indeed today. I woke up to this speech this morning and read through it. I think he was right. He's cutting through all the rubbish. We do have an issue of free speech in this country. We are pilloried. We are a very divided country at the moment. Europe is divided as well. Swathes of Europe are. The US are divided. You only need to look at the percentages of people voting for Democrats and Republicans, and it's still incredibly close. In this country, although it was a landslide victory for the Labour Party, I think there's a lot of post-purchase dissidence going on. A lot of people are regretting what they've voted for. Back to the case of the chap outside the abortion clinic in Scotland. J.D. Vance quite rightly referred to the fact that the Scottish Government, under the SNP, brought in this ludicrous bill, this very divisive bill, that allows you to rat on someone in your own family, in your own house, for a thought crime. Right? And it's extended by the fact that if anyone acts on that, if anyone actually says anything that people disagree with, therefore, I'd say that infringes their free speech of using it. Therefore, they could be investigated and reported to the local authority, to the police services, and they would be arrested. Case in point, it happened. Now, that stand away the side of the fact that I don't think abortion is healthcare. I don't think abortion helps society. Who is praying for the right of the unborn child in this? Because I believe it's a child that is being killed in abortion. It is a hugely emotive subject. I mean, you don't even need to strip it back to women's choice. It's their bodies. It's this, it's that. It takes two people to make a baby, a man and a female. Where is the men's right to this?
OK, and Matthew, just quickly, you want to bring you back in on this one?
I mean, we can have a proper debate about abortion if you want.
This is not about abortion,
right.
this is about the whole free speech issue in this country.
The idea that I, as a man, should be able to make a decision about my partner or wife's body at that stage of a pregnancy seems to me to be appalling.
You don't think you have a say in it?
No, I don't.
And I don't
under law. That said, let me be clear about my own position within my own sphere on abortion. I would never suggest to someone that I was with that they had an abortion, because I wouldn't want to be a part of it. But I would respect my partner's right to decide, and also I would respect the law. And I don't think people should be influencing, I used the word intimidating earlier, I think maybe the word was influencing people outside an abortion clinic. And if you break the law in this country, then you pay the price. I just asked Claire on the wider issue of free speech. I heard your point about this SNP bill.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that sure it ever became law. And it sounds to me, and I've heard vaguely about that before, that it was overreached by the SNP. I'm no fan of the SNP in Scotland. I'm not sure, by the way, it was a thought crime, because someone would obviously have had to say something.
Well,
but more widely, on free speech, is there anything you feel you would like to say on this programme today that you are forbidden to say under the law?
No.
Right, so we haven't got a crisis of free speech then, have we?
Well, we do to a certain extent, Matthew, and I think extended into... Look at universities, right? Tertiary educational facilities should be a breeding ground for new thought, new policy, new ideas. Instead, we've got reports today that universities are saying, don't say the older generation, don't mention words of the golden years, don't mention this, don't mention that. That, to me, is an impingement on free speech. Yeah, and it's at a very base level, Dawn. We're talking about young kids coming out of school. They've worked really, really hard. You know what it's like to work really hard and achieve good academic grades, Matthew. See? To come into he's very clever, and then go into a great university and then be able to explore. They're not being able to... They're not envisaged and they're not emboldened, they're not empowered to grow.
Agree with you.
Okay, you can't agree. You might be very clever, but you can't agree or disagree just yet, because we have to go.
Can we come back to it?
Yeah, we are coming back to this later on.
Come back to you.